Liminal spaces. Man, liminal spaces, why are they so scary? Why are they scary? I guess we just associate liminal spaces nowadays with horror. Like, I do, I guess. It's subjective. But I consider liminal space to be pretty scary. I guess it's more so it's just surreal, right? It's surrealism, but in the light of liminal spaces. A liminal space is really just any space that is kind of weird looking and make it empty, and now it's a liminal space. Hey, look at this, right? This is just a children's birthday party. Take out all the kids, now it's a liminal space. Is it not? I guess a big part of liminal space is nostalgia, right? I guess that's why nowadays we're cashing in on it so easily, and you can make any kind of movie and you just make kind of surreal, kind of put a little bit of liminal space in there, and it's simple. Nostalgia is the biggest driving factor towards liminal space for me personally, I think. And not even really me personally, I think most people, because why else would something like a kid's birthday party at Partyland or what's that other one? I don't know, bowling alley. It's a liminal space. And I think a big factor of it is nostalgia, but also a big factor of it is emptiness, alone, being in a big room alone, or maybe even just a couple of people, right? Today we're gonna be talking about some movies that use liminal space really well. Whether it's a horror movie or not horror movie, why it kind of edges into being a horror movie just based off of the liminal space that it shows, and why that liminal space is even scary. Because realistically, liminal space should not be scary, right? It's just an empty space, but it evokes this feeling. And what does it say on Google? A transitional or in-between state, often physical, that evokes feelings of unease and ambiguity. What is ambiguity? The quality of being open to more than one interpretation. That's surrealism. I feel like liminal space and surrealism go hand in hand, no? Is that just me? I feel like that's the case. And that may just be subjective, and I'm looking at a lot of these movies that I'm gonna talk about today, and I'm thinking, okay, some of them really are just surrealism, and they're not really liminal space. But either way, I think a big driving factor of what liminal space is nowadays and why we associate it with horror is the backrooms. Is that not the case? Because Kane Pixel's YouTube series, The Backrooms, is certainly a driving factor in my head. That's a completely different thing, because that's putting entities into the liminal space, not actually just liminal space. Liminal space doesn't have any demons. It doesn't have any monsters. That's kind of the horror part of liminal space. That's why we associate it so much with horror, or at least I guess that's why I associate it so much with horror. It's also surrealism, and to me, I think surrealism is scarier than a goblin. A little ghoul, a ghost, you know? A guy in a mask with a knife. I guess that would be pretty scary too, actually. Like, that would suck. Today we're gonna be talking about some movies that use liminal space well or not very well in a horror or non-horror theme. The first one I want to talk about today is The Truman Show. This is a 1998 sci-fi comedy that, in my opinion, edges the line in between horror and not horror. Because realistically, goddamn, this is a horror movie, man. This is a very scary scenario, right? You have one character who's in an entirely controlled environment. He doesn't know he's in that environment. This is a Black Mirror episode in 1998, and I guess maybe it wasn't really like a liminal spaces sub-theme then, because a lot of, like I was saying, a lot of liminal space is nostalgia based. But there was nostalgia in 1998, no? Nowadays we just look at nostalgia and think about things from like the 2000s or the 90s, right? I'm 26, I was born in 99, so yeah, I'm a 90s baby, but no, I'm not. I don't know anything from the 90s. It's 2000s, and I see a lot of like Facebook reels and stuff that are fishing for, you know, liminal spaces and nostalgia bait, and I'm affected by a lot of it. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And The Truman Show is not nostalgia at all to me, because I didn't watch this movie until last week. Anyway, The Truman Show does a really good job at showing some liminal spaces. My favorite part about it, Truman is getting out of the island. He's getting off the island, he's on a boat, and he runs into a wall that is the skyline. And that is some of the scariest shit that I can think of, man. If I somehow found out that I'm living in a box, not real life, that'd be freaky, it'd be horrifying. And you know, this is kind of like the adding up of the entire movie, and honestly just his whole life in general, is trying to get off of the island and explore the world. Fiji, right? That's a big one. He wants to go to Fiji. Fiji's outside of that box. But this feeling was really crazy, right? He runs into the wall and then he walks up these stairs and dude, that shit is scary, man. That is a liminal space, and that's not at all just subjected to nostalgia. Because first off, dude, How are you going to be nostalgic to this? Because you were not in a box with a stairway that walked up outside of the existent world that you know of. That is not nostalgia. That is surrealism. There's this one really cool scene where there's like a spotlight of rain and it's coming right down on Truman, Jim Carrey, and he like takes a step to the side and then the rain is still falling on him. And I think that shit is so cool, and for some reason it feels like a liminal space. It is just surreal. I don't know why that's so tied to liminal spaces, but yeah, it's very surreal. Not really a liminal space, more so just like surrealism and like controlled. But yeah, it's kind of scary. This movie is unbelievably liminal space pilled. It's a Tim Burton movie, so of course, you know, it's zany, it's wacky, right? You have all these super bright colors, but there's contrast between like the very dark emo Edward Scissorhands and the castle that he lives in. There's like gargoyles and shit. It's very dark, but a lot of it is very light. Look at the town, right? This town, it's just a ton of really, really colorful buildings, streetlights, dude. I don't know what it is about streetlights, but streetlights are very liminal spaces to me. I don't really know why. They just are. I don't have a good explanation for why they feel like a liminal space to me, but they do. Late night, you're looking at Facebook Reels and you're just scrolling through your phone, and a lot of them, you know, shit like where you sleeping the hardest, what liminal space you getting freaked out in the most, you know, what backroom level you living on, you know, that kind of stuff. I don't know why, but there's a street light in so many of them. And it resonates with me. Like a dark alley that's empty with a street light, that's enough to feel like a liminal space to me. And that might just be stupid. But I feel like this is kind of a subjective thing, no? A lot of it's about evoking a feeling, and feelings are subjective, so I feel like liminal spaces are subjective. Anyway, I love the set design in this movie, Edward Scissorhands. God damn, it is so good. The super bright buildings. There's this one scene where it's like a top-down shot, and there's a bunch of cars in sync. Like the man of the household is going to work at the same time in a different car, and every single one of the cars are brightly colored, but different from the house that they're leaving. So it's just a lot of colors, and it's perfect. Honestly, that's what it is. It comes down to being perfection, and that is surrealist because this world is goddamn not perfect at all. It's very not perfect. This world is actually incredibly imperfect. So when you see something that's like perfection, that feels surreal. And like I said, surreal is tied to liminal spaces in my head for some reason, and so that's where we're at. This is an old show. This is a Stephen King TV show. It's called The Langoliers. And it's very liminal spaces. This is probably one of the best examples of liminal spaces movies because the whole thing takes place in an abandoned commercial airport. It doesn't get much more liminal spaces than that, right? A giant place that's empty and has a bunch of people. So a big part of liminal spaces is emptiness, being alone, or you know, a handful of people in a place that should have a lot of people. That's a big part of what creates a liminal space. There's also some weird shit at the end, you know, there's like an entity in this, so it's very backrooms coded, to be honest. It's a liminal space with an entity in it. It's basically the backrooms before the backrooms started, and they kind of no-clip into it, actually. They like enter this alternate reality by falling asleep on a plane. It doesn't really explain it much better. It's weird. It's a Stephen King thing. He has some weird stuff sometimes. But yeah, the movie is very surreal, very liminal spaces. The acting's bad, the characters are goofy, but you know, it's a good watch. Now, I do want to bring to the fact that just being empty does not just make it a liminal space, because I was thinking about this in a different movie, and I guess I'll talk about this section more later, but there's a difference between like an abandoned place and an empty place, right? An abandoned place might have looters entered, right? And like destroyed things, cobwebs and stuff. I think cobwebs kind of like take away from the liminal space because that is signs of life, right? Is cobwebs. It's not humans, but it's life. I feel like a big part of a liminal space is feeling not real, right? Surrealism. Like there's never been a life here, or there was, and they created this society, and where are they now? I mean, that's like the scariest part about it, right? This next one I'm going to talk about is Dimland, and I think this is one of the worst ones on this list. It's a fine movie. It's a random movie I watched on Tubi. By the way, most of these movies that I'm talking about is just a combination of what are the most liminal spaces coded movies from like Google and Reddit. So that's what these movies are from. I didn't just conjure up this movie. I wasn't just watching it. I watched these with the expectation of this video, talking about liminal spaces in movies. Anyway, Dimland, yeah, it's a cool movie. It was a little freaky when the guy first appears. So Dimland is basically like an alternate reality that you can enter maybe via the imaginary friend that this lady dreamed up. I don't know. To be honest, I was mostly just half watching it. Like I said, I was watching this mostly for the aesthetic. But this movie, it seemed like it was gonna be very liminal spaces, and it didn't really do that. Dimland is like an alternate reality that you enter, and it's the world, but dim. Dim land. Dimland? Dimland Saga? But the whole movie really takes place in like this dark forest that only shows little brackets of light, so you can see only a little bit in front of you. It's not really it is surreal, like it's not real, but it doesn't really feel very liminal spaces to me. That might be stupid, but like I said, it's very subjective, is liminal spaces, in my opinion. And this one just didn't really do it for me. So I don't know, if you're gonna be watching random movies from this video, I'd probably skip Dimland. Yeah, I can't super recommend this one. Vivarium. Now this one I will super recommend. This is a really good movie. It does the liminal spaces thing in the modern day, probably the best. It's a 2019 movie, so it's a lot newer than all the other movies on the list. All the movies we talked about already. 2019, it's a good movie. Okay, so this one is a horror movie. It is not trying to edge the line between something and horror. It is just a horror movie.
Yum, yum.
It is very blatant, in my opinion. It's clearly about like suburbia and how once you go into it and like raise a kid and get a job, then kind of the whole rest of your life is set out in front of you, and you do it until you die. And that's what it is. And you're just like preparing the young for what their life will be. And then it's a never-ending cycle. And it does that goal really well. But it does the liminal spaces thing really, really well. Of course, when you first enter the neighborhood, it's an inescapable neighborhood. It's a labyrinth of a neighborhood that's indefinite, which is already clearly, you know, a level of the back rooms that if you're thinking of, it's a level in the back rooms. I mean, honestly, this environment is something that you could very easily see on a Facebook reel late at night when you're looking through and you see a liminal spaces, and you know the songs. It plays one of those songs.
Which shower you sleeping in the hardest?
But it does it so well. It's a literal never-ending labyrinth of the same exact house over and over and over. Each one has a perfect fence, a perfectly trimmed yard. It has a street light. God damn it, that is a liminal space indicator, is a street light. And then you look up and there's goddamn perfect clouds, perfect cloud, cloud-shaped clouds. They even make a point of this later in the movie.
What's that cloud in the shape of?
A cloud.
That's right.
It's funny because that was one of the first things I noticed in the movie itself, was how perfect these clouds were in the sky, and they're lined up perfectly, and it's just freaky, man. And then they talk about it at one point, you know, she's like sitting there with the kid. There's a demon child. We'll skip that. A cloud, because he doesn't know any different, right? He's only been in this environment, so he looks up at the clouds and he just sees clouds. But in real life, you look up at clouds and they're not perfect, right? They're not all the exact same shape. They're all different. That is a liminal space indicator, is perfection. I think that's another liminal space indicator. There's a lot of different indicators that can show a liminal space, and you know, nostalgia is probably the biggest one, but also perfection. I think that's one that people don't really talk about, is perfection, right? I like this movie. I like this movie more than I guess most people do, because most of the time when I talk about this movie, people are like, yeah, I don't really like that movie, which is fine. They don't do the liminal spaces thing quite the same as most of the time, right? It doesn't try to make things surreal. It doesn't try to make the liminal spaces creepy. The liminal spaces are kind of just part of the world. They try to normalize the liminal spaces in this movie. Okay, so let me give you some examples, right? A big part of this movie takes place in an abandoned high school, and more importantly, in the pool room of an abandoned high school. And that's where most of the liminal space comes from in this movie. I watched this movie like 2 times before I watched it last week for this video specifically, and it never really rang a bell when I was thinking of like liminal spaces movies. I wasn't thinking about It Follows until I saw it on a random Reddit post, and somebody was like, this is one of the most liminal spaces movies. And I was like, that's not the case. But it is. Now, there's another time that I was thinking about that I'm going to talk about that I kind of alluded to earlier on, where, you know, like a looted place, a place that has been destroyed, right? And it's empty and it's barren, but there's a bunch of like shelves that are opened, and there's like bottles of pills that are empty and so maybe scattered, and there's like food remnants all over the place. It's dirty, it's ran down, and I just don't really see this as a liminal space. This makes me think of like a Last of Us place, right? A post-apocalyptic place, something that's been looted, something that's been, you know, lived in. It doesn't ring a bell to me as a liminal space, and that's the part that I alluded to earlier, is that a post-apocalyptic area is different, empty, than a liminal space, empty. This is an incredibly surreal movie. I mean, actually, when I think of surreal movies, this is one of the most surreal movies out there. I like it a lot, and it does do a little bit of the whole liminal space thing. There's a lot of the movie takes place in an abandoned high school. Nothing on the lockers. I mean, you could make a case that this like a figment of his imagination, which it probably is. Nothing in this movie actually happens, because nothing is real in the movie. I mean, people age at a rapid pace. It's very liminal space, but it's mostly just surreal, right? The empty high school is certainly a liminal space. And honestly, the ice cream shop in the middle of nowhere in a blizzard, pretty liminal space, but there's people in there, there's a lot of life. I don't know. This movie doesn't do the liminal space as well as a lot of other movies on the list, but this movie's really good, so you should give this one a watch. Anyway, yeah, that's really it. I wanted to talk about, you know, liminal spaces. And why they're so scary. If you have some more suggestions of movies that feel like liminal space, like kind of similar to these movies, comment them down below. And if you agree or disagree with any of my takes, or think it's not really as subjective as I say, comment it down below. I want to hear what you think about like this liminal spaces thing. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe. Right? Wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be cool?